Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today for a live virtual town hall. I invited students from all across the 14th Congressional District to participate today, and I'm so happy so many of you were able to join me. Now, many of you are watching this from home and have started the school year off with virtual learning. I'm sure it's not how you had hoped that this year would begin. I know that this week has been especially difficult for so many of us, myself included. Losing a historic Supreme Court Justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, has been incredibly sad and leaves us wondering what'll happen next. We're going through a lot as a country right now, and I'm sure you are individually too. But I have to tell you, this right here is what gives me hope. Seeing all of you step up, take the time out of your day to jump on to this call to participate in our democracy, it really just gives me comfort that we're all going to be stronger than ever on the other side of this pandemic. Now, today, I'm in my office in Washington, D.C. In just a second, I'll give you an update on what we've been working on as your representative in Congress. Then we'll answer some questions that you asked when you registered to kick us off. You asked some super thoughtful questions, and I can't wait to talk about the issues that are most important to you. And then after that, we'll answer some questions live. And so you can put them in the QA section in the chat box, and I guess it's on your right. Now, I have to tell you all, because this is Congress, of course, we're multitasking. So I am also in a committee hearing right now on education and labor. And we are voting on a bill related to apprenticeships, which are so important and relevant to so many of you as an option for your post-secondary career if you don't want to go to four-year college or community college and you're thinking about options. Apprenticeships are such an attractive avenue to take. So I'm going to have to pause and look like this and vote virtually on another screen, but then we'll be right back. I also want you to know that we have votes on the floor of the House right now. So if you're curious, you can turn on C-SPAN and you can watch us vote. And so I'll have to run off to the floor at some point during today's session. So we got to stay flexible. We have to stay nimble here in Congress and do several things at once, but I wanted to make sure that we could have this time together. So, as you can imagine, right now, Congress is what we call in session, which means that we're in Washington, D.C., voting on legislation on the floor of the House. A few of the bills that we voted on this week include the Justice for Juveniles Act, which helps protect young people from abuses in prison, something that we all want to prevent. We've also voted on the National Suicide Hotline Designation Act of 2020, which I've been proud to support as a co-sponsor. This bill would make calling the National Suicide Hotline as easy as dialing 911. If someone's in a crisis, instead of having to look up or memorize a really long number, you'll just be able to quickly dial 988 on your telephone all across the country. Cell phone, landline, doesn't matter. It'll connect you to that suicide hotline to save a life. We also voted on funding for the federal government. In Congress, it's called a continuing resolution, which is Congress speak for a short-term bill that keeps overall funding basically the same, but sometimes it'll have a few tweaks, and it's just for a really short period of time. So this week's continuing resolution funds government through mid-December, which is not an ideal solution. The House passed a full-year funding bill earlier this summer, but we're waiting on the Senate to act. And so this enables us to keep the government functioning in the meantime. In addition to the spending bill this week, I've been fighting for students, for families, and communities during this really difficult time. We need another coronavirus relief package with funding for schools, an additional round of economic relief payments, relief for student loans and small businesses, and a continuation of unemployment benefits. We're also in the middle of a public health and economic crisis. You all probably know this, but I am a proud registered nurse, and I know that you deal with crises like the coronavirus not only with compassion, but also by trusting and being guided by the science. And in order for COVID-19 to be successfully managed, we need to rely on a science-based federal approach. I've called for a national strategy for robust COVID-19 testing, contact tracing, and for the development of free treatment and a vaccine. We still have time to do this, and I'm hopeful that my colleagues can come together to get this next relief package done. Throughout my time in Congress, I've seen the critical importance of trusting science and the unacceptable cost of rejecting it. You all may have seen the hazy skies and horrifying reports of thousands of Americans being evacuated over the past weeks as wildfires burned in California, Washington State, and Oregon. Or you may have seen the record number of hurricanes that the Gulf Coast has experienced already this season. And you certainly don't have to look far to see the effects of climate change right here in the 14th Congressional District. Our communities see regular flooding that leaves homes and businesses damaged, and it affects our farmers' growing season. Climate change is real, and it is incredibly urgent. We cannot ignore the serious environmental, economic, and public health risks of climate change. Because this crisis is so urgent for younger generations like ours, one of the first bills that I introduced in Congress was the Climate and Health Protection Act, which supports local communities in responding to the public health effects of climate change. This Congress, because we have a Democratic majority, the Speaker was able to create a special select committee on the climate crisis to respond to this existential threat. That committee has spent the last 18 months reviewing the science and engaging with our communities. And this summer, they put out a huge report with a policy roadmap. I recommend that you all check it out if you're interested. My staff can share the summary with you. They'll put it in the chat box or email it to those who RSVP. But it's long. I'm going to tell you, it's like over 500 pages. It's that comprehensive. But they have some summary fact sheets on the website too. I'm so proud that my bill, the Climate and Health Protection Act, was included in the report as one of those recommendations for essential steps to deal with the crisis. Our future depends on scientists and public health experts, but also it depends on you, our future STEM and policy leaders. We must utilize science to make our decisions and protect our communities. It's essential. It's so important that you've taken the time to join me here today. We need people like you, our future leaders, to be engaged and involved in our policy processes. You'll soon be the ones making decisions in the boardrooms and classrooms and in the halls of Congress. Your civic engagement matters, and it makes a difference. Now, we all know civic engagement can take a variety of forms. It can be as simple as writing a letter to your representative, voting in an election, or taking 5 minutes to fill out your census form every 10 years. Or it could mean running for office yourself one day. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a future state representative or member of Congress watching this town hall today. There are so many ways that you can practice your civic engagement right now. We have a survey for you, so please answer yes on the survey if your parents or guardians have completed their census. If you're not sure, consider it your homework. Yes, we're giving you an assignment to sit down with your family and fill out the 2020 census together. It's crucial in determining how much money our community is going to get in upcoming years. But you have to fill it out like this week, okay? Literally, we have 7 days left for the census. I promise it's the easiest homework assignment you've ever gotten. You can fill out the census in just a couple minutes at 2020census.gov, okay? 2020census.gov. Now, you may also know that we have an election coming up in November, and this election includes federal, state, and local candidates. And if you're 18 or older right now, or if you will be 18 by November 3rd, 2020, you're going to be old enough to vote. Yes, this is Andrea Harris. Andrea is our chief of staff.
Hello. It's almost your time to vote.
Okay, so I'm going to vote again, friends. So 1 second. Underwood votes aye. Thank you. See, it was that easy. Okay, so we're talking about voting, one of our favorite topics. So if you are 18 right now, or if you will be 18 by November 3rd, you are old enough to vote, but you have to be registered. And so if you need to register to vote, you can do so by visiting the Illinois State Board of Elections website. And this is a lot of letters, okay? So it's OVA, V like Victor, OVA.elections.il.gov. Hopefully somebody can put that link in the chat for us. And finally, if you're 16 years old by election day, then you have the opportunity to be an election judge. And you can find out information on how to serve as the election judge on your county clerk's website. And as you know, in the 14th district, we have 7 counties. So you got to pick the one that you live in and then get the information about how to be an election judge. It's critical that you stay engaged and continue to support our communities through your involvement. Now, I'm hosting the student town hall because I continue to work for our community. And this is not the first student town hall that we've seen. Well, we had a youth town hall, but I think it's pretty similar. We want to hear about the issues that you care about the most. We had several wonderful questions that were submitted during registration. So thank you all for doing that. And we'll get started with a few of those, but please feel free to send more questions through the QA at the bottom right of your screen. And then we're going to take those questions live as well. So let's get into the questions. Okay, so Ben S. from Wabansie Valley High School, our warrior friend Ben, asked, what piece of legislation has Congress been working on or passed recently? And so one of the most critical pieces of legislation that we passed this month is the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, which would ensure that pregnant women can't be denied basic accommodations by their employers. Currently, pregnant women are not explicitly protected, and in the height of a pandemic, it's never been more important that pregnant workers can work safely and without jeopardizing their health. The second really important bill that we've been working on recently is the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. So many people, young people in our community, demanded action on racism and race and policing after the police killing of George Floyd. The House passed the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, which would create more transparency and accountability in policing across the country. But young people were demanding more action in their schools and on the local level. And so, we have a Strength and Diversity Act that makes federal resources available for those types of local changes. So it's important, right, that the federal government can be here to help support local initiatives, create funding opportunities, and be responsive to the requests of our communities. Okay, so Linnell from Matea Valley asks, what does our typical day look like? So during coronavirus, everything is different, but I can tell you about my day today. So today I got up really early and was at the Capitol by 8 a.m. because we had a briefing on our House Homeland Security Committee. And, I serve as vice chair on that committee, and we got briefed by the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security and the National Counterterrorism Center about worldwide terrorism threats. And so that was a classified briefing for an hour, and we got to ask questions, and it was kind of a follow-up to a hearing that we had, a public hearing last week where the FBI director came and testified before the committee. So we got to get, answers that are classified so that, we can get more details, basically, to make sure that we're able to keep our country and our community safe. After that, I got a COVID test. And then after that, I had this markup. So what markup means is that we are considering legislation, this apprenticeship bill, but at the committee level, which means you can add amendments. So we've had to take several votes over the last several hours in order to advance this bill. Well, we'll decide whether to advance it to the full House for consideration. And that's when something passes the House. If it passes the full House, it passes the House and then goes over to the Senate for consideration. So we're doing that. Then while we've been doing this markup, I had to come to the Capitol in order to vote because we are considering a climate change and clean energy economy bill today on the floor of the House. So it's been a busy day, but the highlight has obviously been being with you. Thank you, Linnell, for that great question. Okay, Olivia from Plainfield South High School asked, what's one bill that I voted on, if any, that I feel like can change lives? And did others agree with me, and what was my stance? So One of the ones that I think was one of the most important votes that we've taken this year is H.R. 8, the Bipartisan Background Checks Act of 2019. And this bill was really important because it calls for universal background checks on all gun sales in this country. And that's something that has broad support among the American people, right? Over 90% of the American people support that legislation. And it is one that we, took up a week after we saw that shooting at the Henry Pratt Company in Aurora that touched 5 families, right? We lost 5 lives in the 14th district because that gunman had a weapon that he should not have had. And so we need this kind of common sense legislation in our as law to protect our communities. And I hope that the Senate can take it up. We're wearing our orange masks today, these ones, as we're out and about to call attention to gun violence prevention and to, support H.R. 8 and demand action. And so from time to time, you'll see us in our orange scarves or orange T-shirts or orange masks or orange ribbon, right, to call attention to this issue. So again, H.R. 8, look it up. William from St. Charles East High School asked, what part, big or small, being a congresswoman surprised me the most? And there are some things that are really surprising about this place. But one of the things that I think is most surprising, and this is just like really small, is how much moves on paper. So you and I know that, I'm a millennial, you all are Gen Z, and everything that we do is basically electronic. We talk with our family and friends over email and social media and DMs and all these other things. We're texting one another. We have our group meets. We have our text chains. And we're more likely to communicate through emojis than with paragraphs, right? Like that's just how we communicate with one another, not in the Congress. And so literally, I have file cabinets. We have file cabinets because everything we do here is on paper. They print out the bills and deliver it. And they, that's how we examine the legislation. They want to give you a packet or a memo and they don't send it to you over email. And it's just shocking to me. The other part that's a small surprise, but I had to learn how to file and create a system here so that I could stay organized and, keep up with everything. The other thing that was surprising is there's a lot that we agree on. I think that there's this assumption that everything that Congress works on is controversial and it's not moving forward. And there's just this huge policy disagreement that just stops our ability from being productive on behalf of the American people. When in reality, there's so much that passes this body by what's called a voice vote, meaning it passes unanimously through the House of Representatives. So one of my bills, the Veteran Care Quality and Transparency Act, passed the House unanimously in May of 2019. And so we've been waiting for Senate action for over a year on something that passed the House unanimously. And that happens all the time around here. Really common sense solutions to solve big problems in our country, like veteran suicide, right? We have over 20 veterans that are dying by suicide every day. And half of them are not connected with the VA for care. And we have a solution, and it's sitting in the Senate. Okay, but my point is that it passed the House unanimously. And so we're getting things done for the American people. I just think that the press doesn't cover it as much. Okay, Cabria from Plainfield South. Hi, Cabria asked, what made you want to go into politics?
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but you're needed to vote on the floor.
Okay, so am I coming back?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I would just ask, so we have to go vote. So I'm going to run over to the Capitol, and we're going to try to come back right away. So let's call this intermission. Y'all can turn on C-SPAN. Everybody has it if you have cable. And I look forward to seeing you soon, everybody. So sorry for this interruption. Bye-bye.
For what purpose does a gentleman from California seek recognition? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the member designated by Mr. Huffman, pursuant to H.Res. 965, and the House that Mr. Huffman will vote yes on the recognition.
Designated by Mr. Desanya, pursuant to H.Res. 965, I'm from the House that Mr. Desanya will vote yes on the amendment on block number 4.
But from Illinois, seek recognition.
As a member designated by Mr. Rush pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Mr. Rush will vote yes on the amendment to block number 4. Back. Okay, so we're going to go to questions, live questions next. And I hear that we have a good question or an interest. I don't even know what the question is from someone named Chris. So Chris, I think we're going to unmute you so you can ask your question. Welcome. Oh, Chris says he can't unmute, team. Chris Paolilli. You want me to read Chris's question?
I think it's working.
Yep, you should be muted now.
Hi, nice to talk to you.
You too.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, because you have firsthand experience, working in healthcare and stuff like that, what do you think are some of the biggest things that we can improve upon in our medical system, on a state level, to prevent something as serious as COVID from happening again, or just to mitigate the damage that it does?
Yep. So, what's been interesting about COVID-19 is that every year the federal government gathers state departments of health and emergency managers and large cities like the city of Chicago together for what they call tabletop exercises, which are just practice sessions. You get a scenario, you kind of have to game it through. And they do them for a variety of just different topics that would challenge our system, that would create national security threats, or cause, widespread illness or destruction. And so they happen very routinely. In fact, one happened the week before President Trump was sworn into office and his administration took over. And at that time, they were planning for a disease like COVID to come in and kind of, take over in our communities and infect a lot of people and hurt a lot of people. And there were plans in place to help communities like ours and our state move through. I think what we need to do in the future is to make sure that we are following those plans and recommendations. That hasn't quite happened. And so, the nation's experts know what to do in times of pandemics, in times of natural disasters, in times of public health or other emergencies. And we need to hear those sirens that go up when they go up early, right? So if we got notice that something interesting was going on and challenging and deadly was going on in China in January, that's the cue for us. That's the cue for us to take it seriously and start preparing domestically here in the United States. And so in the future, we have to make sure that, our stockpile is prepared. We have to make sure that our domestic manufacturing is turned on so that we don't have to continue to have healthcare workers and other essential workers being denied personal protection equipment. Even your school systems, right? Your administrators, your superintendents, your school districts continue to tell me that, they are not in the supply chain for all the PPE and sanitary supplies that they need to properly disinfect all the schools. So as a result, there's all this price gouging. They can't get their full request, and it's just one big mess. So what can we do moving forward? We need to follow the plans that we put in place. We need to be close, ears to the ground, so that we can hear those early warning signs and take action immediately to protect communities like ours, states like ours, and our nation. Thanks, Chris, for that great question. And I just want to be clear, it's not a unique healthcare solution. It's a leadership solution. And that applies to natural disasters, emerging infectious diseases, terrorism threats, or anything else, right? If you know that there is a threat looming, we have to take it seriously at that first warning sign. Thank you. So our next person is Tyler Savitsky. Welcome.
Hello.
Hey, Tyler.
So this might be somewhat of a bad question, like since it's around election time, but what bills have you voted for? Looking back, do you regret voting on? Like voting yea or nay on?
Well, in this last year and a half, we've had to take some tough votes, some controversial votes, some things where we had to have a lot of conversations as a community about. I would say that there's certainly votes that I wish we didn't have to take, that circumstances would not have required. I don't think at this time that there's any vote that I regret. And we try to be really thoughtful about the vote and, vote in alignment with what is morally and ethically right and what's in line with our community. I think there was one last summer, the summer of 19, where we had 20 amendments in a row. And one of my colleagues had them back to back. And I voted incorrectly because I thought it was the wrong one, right? So if you have Underwood Amendment number 2 and Underwood Amendment number 3, and I was supposed to be yes on one and no on the other, I kind of inverted them. And so we filed something to correct the record. The people know what our intention was. But that's the only thing I can think of right now, Tyler. But if you have some thoughts, would love to hear your opinion. Okay, so I don't know, maybe Tyler didn't have thoughts. Yeah.
So this sounds like a job where that comes from the heart, kind of.
Well, the job comes from the heart, but it also is we do a lot of town halls and public events. We get calls and emails and outreach from people in the community every single day on topics that are very, very timely about what's going on in the news, what's going on in our country, and what's coming up for a vote. And so we end up having a lot of feedback from residents all across the 14th district on what's going on. And then on top of that, we have 9 advisory councils on everything from veteran affairs and small business to agriculture and science and STEM. We even have a youth advisory council for students like you to advise me and my staff. Sometimes they just meet with my staff because there's so much that we need to go over. And so we end up hearing from people in the 14th on most of the issues that we consider here in the Congress. And so, there are some things that we just don't get a chance to discuss, right? They don't come up in town halls or people don't write in about it. And so that's when I sort of take a look at what we know about our community, what industries are important to the vitality of our community. What do people in our community care about? What's important in our state? What are the things that are going to keep us all safe and healthy? What is that underlying value question, right? And then you kind of make a decision from there. But that's also done in conjunction with this extended dialogue that we have in our community. Thanks so much, Tyler. Okay, so we have another question from Ava Udisky. So Ava, we'll turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you for having this event for us today. I'm just wondering why today's vote was verbal instead of using the voting card.
Yes, that's such a good question. So I voted for myself with my voting card. And so your voting card kind of looks like your student ID card. I think they still give those out in high school with your picture on it and your name. Mine says House of Representatives or U.S. Representative from Illinois. And so that's how I vote for myself. But because we're in COVID-19, we have some special permission that the House passed under House Resolution 965, which says that during this public health emergency, members are permitted to vote by proxy. And so I am the proxy for Representative Bobby Rush. Representative Rush represents a community in Chicago, the Illinois 1st Congressional District. And so every day that we have votes, he sends some correspondence to the clerk of the House of Representatives saying that I, Lauren Underwood, will serve as his proxy. And then he communicates in writing to me what his vote is. And in order for that vote to count in accordance to the rules, I have to vote in accordance with what he writes. So if he says yes, I vote yes. If he says no, I vote no, because it's not my vote, it's his vote. I'm just voicing it. And then I have to go and handwrite his name on a little voting card. I can show you what those voting cards look like. Hold on one second. So when you vote by proxy, or if you forget your electronic voting card, we have these little cards. Yes is I, and that's green, obviously. And then no is red. And I fill these out with his name and turn it in to the clerk staff, and it gets logged. So we do that way. And that's why you heard me at the microphone, voting for Mr. Rush, not for myself today. Thanks, Ava, for that question. Okay, so we have a question from Ptolemy. Ptolemy, I think you're going to be unmuted. And Andrea, can you bring in a pocket constitution, please?
Hello, am I unmuted?
Yes, hi.
Hi, so here, let me send my question in the chat. You know what, never mind, I remember it. Someone said that I would make a good politician. What would I have to do to become a representative or senator?
Oh my gosh, I love that question. I don't even know you, but I know that you're smart and you're assertive, and you are engaged. And the great thing about living in a representative democracy like ours is that a regular person can get himself or herself on the ballot and earn the support of their community to serve in the House of Representatives. Now, I'm not going to tell you what I think you need to do. I'm going to tell you what I know you need to do. And it's laid out in a little book that we call The Constitution of the United States, ladies and gentlemen. And in the Constitution of the United States, under Article 1, Section 2, it describes the House of Representatives. And in there, it says, the House of Representatives shall be comprised of members chosen every second year by the people of several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. Fine. Here's the most important part. No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained to the age of 25 years. He'll be 25 years old. And been 7 years a citizen of the United States. So you have to be a citizen, and you have to have been a citizen for 7 years. And who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state in which he shall be chosen. Okay, so you just have to live in the state for 30 days ahead of your election. In Section 3, they describe what you have to do to be a senator. Article 1, Section 3 is the Senate, and it's all described in this little document. So the good thing is you don't have to be here in the House to be able to get a constitution. It is available online, so you can confirm that yourself. But I think that public service is something that everyone should do, right? We all have had wonderful opportunities afforded to us. And wonderful opportunities doesn't mean that you're rich. It doesn't mean that you have a privileged life. But what it does mean is that, you have the opportunity to learn in school, or you have the opportunity to teach others what you've learned. And I think that part of that service does include serving our country. And so if you haven't thought about serving in your local community, at the municipal level, on a board or commission even, or at the county level, or at the state level, or at the federal level, think about it. Everything doesn't have to be a full-time job like the Congress. Some of these positions are maybe like once a month you meet for 2 hours, but they're really important to the way that our community functions. So, Tommy, I hope you think about it, and read through the Constitution and see if that's something that you want to do. If you want to do those responsibilities outlined in Article 1, I think that you should give it some real consideration. We would love to have you here in the House.
I definitely will think about it. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so then we have another question from Noel.
Yes. Hello there.
Hi.
So what I was asking, it's kind of similar to the previous question, but what are the perks and the downsides of being a congressperson like you?
Okay, so I'd say the perks are you get to meet a lot of people. So all across our community. So our district is really big. I don't know if anybody's ever showed you the map, but it goes from the Wisconsin border in Lake County and McHenry County. So like Gurnee and north to the Wisconsin border, we have like half of Crystal Lake and McHenry County, and then like the whole rest of the county. Okay, all the way down south to Manuka and Kendall County and Shorewood and Will County near Joliet. Then we go west to Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, right? So it's big. And I get to meet people from every single community in our district. And I get to meet people from all across the country who are my colleagues. I get to meet people and work with them and call them friends, people that I've admired for years in my life, people like John Lewis, who is a civil rights hero and icon. And that's, something that I never would have imagined, ever. And, I think it's interesting, and I think of it as a perk to really understand the details of what goes on here on Capitol Hill, the decisions that are being made, and it's a real privilege to be able to serve our country in this way to the best of my abilities. I think it's pretty awesome. I would say a downside is that, we have to travel a lot. So, I'm not at home as much. I don't see my family as much because I'm here in Washington. And it's like, I don't mind it, but sometimes you'd rather not. Sorry if that's offensive to somebody, but just keep it real. And I would say another downside is just that, sometimes there's things that we have to work on that are so important to our community that would make a big difference. And politically, everybody doesn't agree. And so sometimes the solution is right there in front of us and we can't get it done. And it's discouraging, right? People talk a lot about the dysfunction and the gridlock and, how Congress is broken. But I believe that we can fix it. But it's discouraging when other people don't have faith in the institution, right? Like who wants to put forward all this effort into solving problems and make personal sacrifices in order to serve to the best of your ability and give everything that you've got to doing this really big job, and then have people just dismiss it because they say, oh, this is broken. It'll never be fixed. Your work doesn't matter. Like that sucks. So, but I'm going to keep trying. We're not going to be deterred. Thanks, Noel. I appreciate your question. Or Noel? Maybe not Noel. Sorry if I said it wrong. Okay. So we have a few minutes. I'm waiting for a cue on what they want me to do. We have another question in the chat.
I don't think we have any more questions, but if you want to show students around your office a little bit.
Oh my gosh, we get to do the tour. It'll be like House Hunters on HGTV. Okay, so here we go, friends.
I think we might be having a slight technical difficulty here, so if you want to stick around just a few minutes and see if our video comes back on. We see you.
Which is fine. Did you all see the Women in STEM wall behind me here?
No.
Okay. So the Women in STEM are important because we are home to Fermilab here in the 14th District. And Fermilab is a national laboratory. It looks like this, in case folks across the community never took a field trip there. They have bison, and they do really cool discovery work. And STEM is just important throughout our region, research and discovery and innovation, and they're great careers. But we also know that we need more women in STEM. So that's why they're on the wall. I have some flags in the office, like big American flag. And then I was showing, I don't know if you guys care, but I was an intern. I was an intern on Capitol Hill. We didn't talk about internships. Okay, so our office has internships. If you want to learn more about the Congress, about serving our community, join us as an intern. You can join as a high school intern also. And we pay our interns, and you can serve in our district office or in DC when we resume in person. But right now they're all virtual. But when I was in college, I was an intern for Senator Obama. Here's my intern picture. There's young Lauren, looking so young and innocent. Okay, let's see. What else can the show and tell is difficult. Oh, I don't know if we have any Nequa Wildcats on, but I have my Nequa Wildcats on my desk. A little pen holder. What else do you guys care about? You want to see my coin collection? People might like that. Andrea, what should we show? Oh, yes, we're going to have some treats in a second. Okay, so one thing that you all may know or may not is that, okay, if we put that down, that'd be great. Coins are a thing when in the military. And so when you meet high-ranking officers, where you meet, people who do exceptional work in the military, you exchange coins. And so, I have one from like Speaker of the House. I have one from a retired captain in the Navy, which is pretty cool. I don't know which one this is. I have one from a police department. The National Commander of the American Legion. He was really cool. He came and testified before Veterans Affairs, right? So we have stuff like that. Another thing that I think you all should know about the 14th, you may not have known, is that every fruit-flavored Mars candy, like Skittles, are made in the 14th in Kendall County. And so they hook us up. So when you visit us in Washington, you will likely get a sampling of treats. Skittles. Sometimes we have the wild berry Skittles, which are my favorite, but today we have classic. We have Hubba Bubba and Big Red Gum. So stop by and see us when you come to town when COVID is done, and we'll hook you up with a pocket constitution, some candy, and, you'll get to see our democracy in action. Thanks, everybody, so much for joining our student town hall today. Thank you for being patient as I voted in committee and as we voted on the floor of the House. And thanks for asking so many good questions. I know this is a really challenging time in our country. And I know that so many of our families are struggling, whether it's financial challenges, healthcare challenges, or just even being, emotional challenges, because this is a time of trauma. And it's okay if you're not doing great during this time. There are resources here to help. We want to continue to be in touch with you. So as you have feedback or thoughts about the work that we're doing, please let us know. You can call our office 7 days a week, 630-549-2190. Again, 630-549-2190. You can send us an email on our website, underwood.house.gov. And but what I really want to urge you to do is take good care of yourselves, everybody. I know that you get this talk from your parents and from your teachers, but here's the deal. COVID-19 is infecting more young people than anybody else right now. And so we need each of you to continue to do your part, wearing your mask, staying 6 feet apart, and making sure that you have great hand hygiene. We can make it through this pandemic together. But we have to do those things. COVID hasn't gone away just because we're over it. And Lord knows we're all over it. So I'm going to practice what I preach, put my mask back on, go about my day. So good to spend the time with you all. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon. Take good care, everybody. Bye-bye.